I slammed my brakes because she was just there, a woman in a white nurse's uniform standing in the middle of the deserted rural road at 2 a.m. The old highway had no street lights, just endless black stretching between pine trees, so the figure appeared like she'd been painted onto the night. My high beams cut across her face, and it wasn't right. Her eyes didn't reflect light. They just stayed flat and dark, like holes. I sat frozen, hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I even said out loud, "No, no, no, no," like I could will her to disappear. Instead, she tilted her head, almost like a dog listening for a sound. Then she smiled, and that's when I realized her feet weren't touching the ground. I threw the car in reverse without thinking. Gravel spat out from under my tires, the steering wheel fighting against me as I tried to keep it straight. But no matter how far I backed up, she stayed exactly the same distance from my front bumper, as if the road itself was stretching. The sickening part wasn't just that she wasn't getting smaller, it was that she wasn't moving. No footsteps, no floating forward, just fixed in place while the world between us bent. Finally, I slammed the gear into drive, swerved around her, and floored it. For a moment, relief washed through me when the rear view showed nothing but empty road. I laughed nervously, this broken, shaky sound. But a second later, the radio crackled, even though it was off. A woman's voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I nearly veered off the road when the whisper came through. I smacked the radio like an idiot, but the screen was dark, no power, no stations, nothing. I kept driving. The highway wound deeper into forest, and my headlights caught a sign I didn't remember ever seeing before. Sanatorium. The arrow pointed down a narrow gravel road that looked swallowed by trees. My stomach turned because I knew there wasn't anything like that out here. I'd driven this stretch 100 times on my way home from work, and there were no side roads, no signs. Just emptiness. But here's the part that still makes my chest tight when I think about it. In the glow of my high beams, there was a black dog sitting at the edge of the gravel road, perfectly still, watching me. Its body absorbed the light, like my headlights couldn't touch it. And its eyes, God, they weren't eyes. They were holes. Black voids, just like hers. I couldn't stop staring at the dog. It didn't pant, didn't blink, didn't even shift its weight. Just this silent, predatory stillness, like it was waiting for me to make a mistake. I pressed the gas harder, telling myself not to look back, but of course I did. The rear view showed the dog standing in the middle of the road now, facing me head-on. Then my headlights flickered. The dash lights dimmed. For one heartbeat, the entire car shut down. Engine, lights, everything, and the world outside was pitch black. When the lights snapped back on, I wasn't on the highway anymore. I was parked in a circular driveway in front of a huge, windowless house. My stomach dropped because I never turned off the road. I never stopped driving. And the front door of the house was already open. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. The house loomed in front of me, round like an old observatory but with no windows, no seams, just smooth, pale walls that looked poured out of concrete. The open door gaped like a black mouth. I tried to throw the car into reverse. The gear shift moved, but the tires didn't respond. The engine idled uselessly, like the car was bricked in place. Then I heard it, nails clicking on pavement behind me. Slow, deliberate. I didn't look. I couldn't. Instead, I fumbled for my phone, but the screen lit up with text I hadn't typed. "Come inside." The screen went black, and the sound of the nails stopped right next to my driver's side door. I couldn't breathe. The door handle beside me rattled, once, like something testing it from the outside. I slammed the lock button, even though it was already down. Then, silence. I forced myself to look. Nothing was there. Just the empty driveway stretching into the dark trees. No dog. No nurse. No footprints. But the house's doorway, it wasn't empty anymore. A figure stood there, backlit by nothing at all. Just a tall, thin silhouette, motionless. And the moment I looked at it, every light in the car shut off again. This time they didn't come back on. The darkness inside the car was suffocating. I pressed the horn out of pure desperation, but instead of the blare I expected, a low, distorted groan shuddered out, like the car itself was in pain. That's when I saw movement. The figure in the doorway stepped back, disappearing into the house, and the car door on my side unlocked itself. I yanked the handle up to relock it, but before I could, the dome light flickered on. Though the car was still dead, and I swear to God I saw something sitting in the back seat. Not a shape, not a person, just a black void, like a chunk of the world was missing. I bolted out of the car without thinking. The front door of the house was still open, and from inside, I heard the sound of footsteps going upstairs. I stood frozen in the driveway, torn between sprinting into the trees or back into the dead car. But then I noticed something wrong with the house. There were no stairs. I could see straight through the door into a round foyer lit by a single bare bulb. The walls curved smooth and unbroken, rising upward like the inside of a silo. No stairwell, no second floor, just emptiness. And yet the footsteps kept climbing. Measured, steady, circling higher and higher above me, as if there were invisible stairs spiraling the walls. I took one shaky step closer to the doorway, just to prove to myself the space was empty. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, the bulb overhead flared and burst, showering me in sparks. In the dark, the footsteps stopped, and a woman's voice whispered right next to my ear. "You followed." I stumbled back against the curved wall, swatting at the dark like I could push the voice away. My pulse was so loud in my ears I almost didn't hear it, the soft drag of something breathing with me. I lit my phone screen. Weak blue light filled the foyer, and for a second, I thought I was alone. Then I tilted the phone upward. A shadow figure was crouched along the curve of the wall above me, limbs too long, body flat against the surface like a spider clinging to glass. Its head snapped toward the light, and I saw it didn't have a face, just that same void where features should be. The phone slipped from my hand. The light went out as it hit the floor. The last thing I heard before total blackness was the rapid skitter of limbs circling higher, faster, into that impossible second floor. I crouched to grab my phone, but before I could find it, the air shifted, like the pressure dropped in the room. My ears popped, and I realized the silence wasn't silence at all. Something was whispering. Dozens of voices, layered and overlapping, like an old tape recorder playing backward. I pressed my palms against my ears, but the words pushed through anyway. A single phrase kept surfacing in the chaos. "Upstairs, upstairs, upstairs." I told myself not to look, not to acknowledge it. But my body betrayed me. I tilted my head back. There, far above in the curve of the silo-like walls, an opening had appeared. A dark landing that hadn't been there before. And just visible in the shadows, the nurse. Her white uniform glowing faintly, her head tilted, that same smile. She lifted one finger and crooked it at me. The whispers cut off all at once. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I pressed myself against the wall, sliding along the curve, searching for stairs that shouldn't exist. And then, I felt one. My foot landed on solid wood a few inches above the floor. When I lifted my head, the staircase was there. A spiraling set of narrow steps hugging the wall, reaching up to that impossible landing. I knew I shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at me not to. But the moment I saw the stairs, something inside me needed to climb. Each step groaned under my weight, though they looked new, untouched. The air grew colder the higher I went, and halfway up I realized the voices had returned. Except now they weren't whispers. They were breathing in unison, timed with each step I took. By the time I reached the landing, I wasn't sure if the breaths belonged to me anymore. The nurse was gone, and in her place stood the dog. It blocked the landing completely, its body so black it looked cut out of reality. No fur, no shine, just absence. My phone light wouldn't touch it, like the beam bent around. Its head lowered. The air vibrated with a growl that didn't sound like sound at all. It rattled inside my chest, deep and wrong, like my ribs were tuning forks. I froze, gripping the railing, and that's when I realized the stairs beneath me were gone. I glanced down, and my stomach dropped. There was no spiral staircase anymore, just a sheer drop into endless dark. The dog stepped closer. Behind it, the landing stretched, lengthening into a hallway that shouldn't fit inside the house. At the far end was a faint red glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. The dog turned and padded into the hall. Then it stopped, looked back at me, and waited. I told myself I wouldn't follow. I told myself I'd stay put until I woke up or the world snapped back to normal. But when the dog turned its head, those void eyes locking onto me, I felt the same compulsion I had with the stairs. My feet moved. The hallway walls curved in the same perfect circle as the outside of the house. No doors, no windows, just smooth, pale concrete that seemed to sweat in the dim red light ahead. Every step echoed, though the dog's paws made no sound at all. The deeper we went, the louder the pulse became. Not just a sound, but a physical beat in the air, shaking dust from the walls, sinking with my heart until I couldn't tell if I was hearing it or living it. At the very end of the hall, the glow revealed another open doorway. The dog slipped through, and I heard someone on the other side whisper my name. I froze at the threshold. The voice that spoke my name was exactly like mine. Same pitch, same rhythm, like hearing an old recording of myself I didn't remember making. The dog waited just inside, its head cocked like it was curious whether I'd obey. I leaned forward, trying to see past it. And that's when I realized the room beyond wasn't a room at all. It was another circle. Bigger. Walls curving up into blackness. And against those walls, dozens of shadow figures clung like insects, their bodies twitching in jerks and spasms. Some had faces that flickered between strangers and people I knew. One of them looked like my mother. Another like a co-worker who died last year. Every single one was mouthing the same thing. Upstairs. 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 The pulse thundered, drowning my own heartbeat. And then my voice, the one inside, spoke again. Come see what you left behind. I staggered back, shaking my head, whispering no over and over, but the shadows just kept chanting, their mouths snapping open wider than they should. Some of their jaws cracked sideways, like the hinges were broken. The dog stepped aside, clearing the doorway. It was an invitation. I couldn't stop myself. I crossed the threshold. The second my foot touched the floor of that larger circle, the figures dropped. All of them, slamming to the ground in perfect unison. The impact rattled through the concrete like an earthquake. They didn't move. Not at first. Then, one by one, they rose to their feet. Not climbing, just snapping upright as though strings had yanked them. And every single one of them turned their head toward me at the same time. I swear the sound it made, dozens of necks creaking in sync, will never leave my skull. I backed toward the doorway, but the hall I'd come through was gone. Behind me now was only the same curved wall, smooth and endless. The shadows started walking toward me, not rushing, just steady, synchronized steps, their faces flickering like broken screens. One moment strangers, the next people I knew, the next blank voids. My chest tightened. I felt the panic rising like fire. But then, movement above. The invisible stairs were there again, spiraling upward along the curve of the wall. And at the top, in the dim glow of nothing, the nurse stood waiting. She raised her hand and pointed upward. The shadows froze mid-step, as if her gesture had pinned them in place. And in the sudden silence, I realized the pulse had stopped. But my heart hadn't. It was the only beat in the room, and they were all listening to it. The silence was unbearable. I could feel their heads turning with each thud of my heartbeat, their attention locking tighter, as if my chest were a beacon dragging them closer. I forced myself onto the first invisible stair. My foot sank into something solid, even though I couldn't see it, and the nurse's smile widened above me. The shadows stirred again, craning their necks upward to follow. One opened its mouth and a sound tore out, my voice, screaming in agony. Another joined in, then another, until the room was filled with dozens of versions of me howling all at once. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound came from inside my skull. I climbed faster, desperate to escape, though each step groaned like it might give way. My body shook so badly I thought I'd tumble backward into them. The nurse never moved, just stood at the top, fingers still pointing, smile frozen like a mask. And then, for the first time, she blinked. Her eyes were voids too. The blink was wrong. Too slow, like a curtain being dragged shut. When her lids opened again, the void inside them had grown, spilling black down her cheeks like ink. The stairs beneath me lurched, dropping several inches. I grabbed the railing, except there was no railing. My hand clawed at empty air, and I nearly pitched backward into the swarm below. They were waiting with their arms raised, all those flickering faces, all those open mouths. My own screams echoed up at me, multiplied until I couldn't tell if I was joining in or not. The nurse leaned forward, tilting her head the same way she had in the road. And then she spoke, not with her voice, with mine. You followed. The same words she'd whispered in the foyer. Only now, they weren't a warning. They sounded like triumph. And the moment she said it, the stair beneath my foot dissolved. I fell. Not down into the circle, not into the shadows' waiting arms. I fell sideways, like gravity had snapped in half. My body tumbled through a blur of concrete walls spiraling past, faster and faster, until the air tore out of my lungs. Then, sudden stillness. I was back in my car, the engine idling, headlights on, empty road stretching ahead, my hands white-knuckled around the steering wheel. For one fragile second, I thought I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Just stress, just exhaustion. Until I saw it in the mirror. The nurse was sitting in my back seat, head tilted, smiling, and next to her, the black dog, staring out the window as if it belonged there. Neither moved, but the odometer on my dash was spinning upward, miles vanishing in a blur, even though the car wasn't moving at all. I slammed the brakes, but the car didn't slow. The road outside wasn't even road anymore, just endless black stretching in every direction, no trees, no sky, no horizon. Like the world had been erased. The odometer spun faster. My chest ached with each beat, echoing in that void like a drum. The nurse leaned forward between the seats, her face inches from mine. Her eyes weren't holes anymore. They were mirrors. I saw myself reflected in them, wide-eyed, mouth open, but not breathing. The dog shifted, nails clicking on the seat. And then the radio hissed to life. A voice, my voice again, spoke through the static, calm and certain. You never left the house. The speedometer needle buried itself past the max. The world outside dissolved into pure white. And then everything went silent.